Hello and welcome to episode 2 of our 4 episodes of Preparing for Recovery for the law management section of the Law Society and for any other law firms who are tuning in. Just a reminder that I'm Nick Jarrett-Kerr. I'm a member of the global consultancy Edge International. And in the first episode, we covered the first steps to recovery. We looked at crisis management and business continuity, in particular the need for a crisis management team, the need for leaders of law firms to lead from the front, and a reference at this stage, just a reference to business continuity planning. We looked at some essential planning points that should be considered, starting to consider now, creating a sense of common purpose as the firm moves forward to this a new era, analysing the market and our resources to cope, and adapting our structure to more efficient business decisions. And then we looked at ways in which the firm could restore equilibrium. And then in this episode, we're moving on to the whole question of clients, how we interact with them now during a social distancing and lockdown era. How we can nevertheless build, develop and renew trust and confidence, and how we can communicate with empathy. It's about 20 years since Professor David Maister wrote with others the book called The Trusted Advisor, and since that time the whole question of becoming a trusted advisor has been one of the prime objectives of law firm partners as they've tried to build rapport and relationships with their clients. And yet, 20 years on, very few seem to have managed that. And of course, it's now made even more difficult in an era of social distancing. But what I want to do is to talk about 3 ways in which we may be able, nevertheless, to get further into breaking into the client's inner circle of trust. The first is the positives out of making and keeping contact with clients during an era of social distancing. Communicating with clients is always hard work, and we have to be prepared to do some work off the clock. Getting under the client's skin is always tricky, and clients sometimes resent over-familiarity and the feeling that they're going to get charged one way or another every time that the lawyer picks up the phone to them. Having said that, there are some positives out of the current situation that I see. First of all, I think remote calls to clients, as opposed to on-site visits, have now become much more acceptable than ever they were. Now, I've learnt this the hard way. My consulting practice over the last 18 years or so has taken me on many aeroplane trips to many different countries as I've met with clients and worked with them. But what I've discovered lately is that a lot of the work that I do is now much more possible than ever before, using remote technology, using video conferencing, the power of email, telephone calls, and so on. And I think that in this era of social distancing, clients are becoming used to this. They realize that it can be more effective and efficient. It can be, they certainly recognize that there is no travel and that is helpful to all concerned. In this, don't disregard voice-only calls. Some clients prefer it. I think one of the things I've learned through in this era of Zoom and all sorts of other video conferencing methodologies, it can be quite disconcerting seeing your own face on screen. And clients can feel that too. But video calls can be very, very effective in building rapport and giving opportunities, sometimes off the clock, to get to know clients better and what their concerns might be. And I think this has become easier in this later era. There are, however, some negatives. All the research shows that video conferencing is a tiring and draining process. There is a limit to the amount of time, that you can spend in front of a computer or on Zoom and other types of call. I've heard many people complaining, oh, this is my 4th conference call of the day, it's getting so tiring, it's very draining. And there are reasons for that. First of all, you're conscious of the need to work even harder to look at body language, facial expression, seeing if people are engaging with what you're saying, if you're engaging with what they're saying, and so on. It's all too tempting sometimes to get distracted or to multitask, do some emails while you're talking, look at your diary or other things. It's easy to look at your watch while doing video conferencing, much easier than a one-to-one situation. So we have to watch that. Video conferencing is better than nothing in reading body language, but it's not the same as a face-to-face conversation. And there's quite a lot of research on how tricky that can be, particularly in sensitive discussions. For instance, if you're getting involved with a client who is in a considerable amount of pain or in a lot of problem areas, trying to counsel them, mentor them, help them and so on can be very tiring to do on a video conference. You're sitting face to face with each other apart from anything else. You're not sitting side by side. You haven't got a cup of coffee between you. And these face-to-face meetings can seem a little adversarial at times. And of course, the fact remains that when we can meet clients in the flesh, and people are starting to do so with a 2-meter gap, social distancing, and so on, it can be quite easy to do, although meetings of more people become difficult. And of course, the whole issue of client entertaining comes to the fore. So how do we build, develop and renew trust and confidence in our clients? Both, and this is a long-term thing, it isn't just during social distancing, but it is particular at this time when clients are going through the same agonies as we are. Clients are facing the same pandemic as we are. And of course, depending upon whether they are private clients or whether they are commercial clients, and indeed in what sector they're placed, those difficulties may be easy or they may be very tricky indeed. And at this time, it's important not to forget the basic building blocks of how we can impress clients and how we can keep up our client focus. The basic building blocks of exceptional client focus and delivering good value for money. And I think we have to nurture the 4 qualities of legal work, service, accomplishment and relationship. These are 4 qualities that clients love. And I've taken this slide from work done by my late partner, Ed Wiesman, who wrote an excellent article called The Diamond and Water Paradox. And when we're looking at quality at the top of this pictorial, you'll see quality of legal work. And obviously these we take for granted, our breadth of experience, the academic preparation of our lawyers. They're things that the clients would not be using us unless we had those. When it comes to service quality, breadth of service and consistency of performance are key issues. And when it comes to meeting their objectives, accomplishment quality, we have to first of all understand them. And then, of course, we have to try to be successful as we work towards those client objectives. But then there's the relationship quality, which is what I've been talking about, which is how we build trust at the client level with us and how we can get to know the client so much better so that we can be in their inner circle of people who they feel they can rely on. So that's nurturing clients through the 4 qualities of legal work, which has always been around and still around today. With the pandemic, however, this is a real opportunity to stress how cost-effective we can be, how the elements of good project management can still be maintained, and how we are showing ways in which we can be flexible and proactive towards the clients. Now, I can't give you many illustrations as to how you can do that. It's up to you to do that yourselves. But do try and get up to date with technology. Try to get through to clients in the ways in which they like to use. Now, if you've got a favorite application, mine, for example, I prefer Zoom, but there are many other different ones, and it's good to find out what the client likes and to use their preferred technology. This gives us more ability to use long-distance methods to understand the client's business, to show attentiveness to them, and to be responsive to their needs. But it all takes energy. Building trust and confidence with clients and building rapport with them is a marathon, not a sprint. And when you're involved in a marathon, the runner hits a wall at some stage when they seem to lose energy and feel like giving up. So when you hit the wall, the adaptive and fit professional needs persistence and oxygen to win through. It's so easy at that stage to turn to more immediately satisfying goal-related efforts or to another client. But keep going, keep at it. And this brings me on to the question of communicating with empathy. And I do really think that this is one of the main building blocks of being able to build trust and confidence and get into a client's inner circle with them. And we've all heard the word empathy, but I think it takes a bit of unpacking to know exactly what it means. My definition is that it is standing in the shoes of client, knowing what it's like to be that client, trying to imagine what they're going through, trying to imagine what it's like, who they answer to, what their responsibilities are if they're commercial clients, what their health issues might be if they are aged clients, private clients, what they're going through if they're buying a house or dealing with a piece of litigation, if they've had an accident or something like that. Understanding what it's like to be them. And this can foster the ability to align more completely with their agenda and their motivations rather than yours. Now, empathy is particularly useful when you've got a client who's in pain or is in a dark place or is a time of personal problems or confusions. The whole well-known question, what keeps you awake at night, is a key question here. Empathy gives you an opportunity to get to know your clients or indeed your colleagues, because a lot of what I'm saying here relates just as much within the firm as outside it. In fact, it's very important within a partnership and within a law firm to really understand your colleagues at as deep a level as possible, to try and work out what type of personality they are. And different personalities, we're not all like ourselves. We have to understand that different personalities react in different ways. I found this out in marriage, that it took me a long time to realize that my wife doesn't think the same way as I do, and that isn't because she's a woman. It's because she views the world differently. She's a different personality type than I am. I'm much more driven, goal-oriented. She's much more peace-oriented, relaxing, and so on. A relaxed person, much more artistic. She's much more of an artist, and I'm much more of a wordsmith. And learning these differences is very important to understand how someone else deals with anxieties, what those worries might be. Something that worries me might not worry them. Something that drives or motivates me might not drive or motivate them. What makes me sad or depressed or angry may be totally different to what your client feels. And so it's important to try and build, if you like, a picture using one of the many methodologies around of how your colleagues are and how your clients might be as well. However you do this, there are some tools that need to be employed for communicating with empathy. The first, obviously, is to put hard yards in off the billing clock. And sometimes you have to say to the client, listen, I've turned the clock off, or whatever words are that you'd want to use, because I just want to understand a bit more of what you're going through. I just want to understand how your business is coping, how your family is coping, depending on the circumstance. And this needs active listening. It needs the ability to understand the deeper needs of the person you're talking to, and indeed their triggered emotions. When you go deep into listening, this speaks in far more powerful ways than talking ever would, and then interrupting them. And one helpful tip, a couple of helpful tips. One is the old one you've probably heard before about 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should be using those in proportion. And the second is that when we're listening to somebody, try listening to how you think they're feeling, not just the words they're speaking, but what emotions, what behaviors, what feelings are being triggered. It can be really helpful to discovering more about your clients. And there are some traps to avoid. First of all, there's the trap of interrupting the client, jumping to too quick to a conclusion, or trying to look good. It's hard to realize that actually listening makes you look good. You don't have to be talking a lot. So interruptions are a real no-no when it comes to empathy. The other thing is trying to fix the client's pain or the wrong problem, or to give false reassurance. Now, this is a really tricky one for lawyers because we're built, what our job is to solve our clients' problems. That's what we're employed for. But it's also easy to say, oh, I'm sure it's going to be all right for you if they're facing litigation, to give them false reassurance, to tell them things that you think they want to hear rather than the truth that is much more important for them to hear. So don't try and fix their emotional pain. Just try and be with them. Try and be with them in it. Walk alongside them with it. So the third issue is the typical tendency is to deflect the conversation into something about me or something that I've done. So I might say, oh, this reminds me of another client or a similar situation. I did this or that. There may be a place for this, but you have to be careful when you do that. You have to be very careful not to make it seem as though you have jumped, that you're trying to jump to fix their problem at a time when the client isn't ready for it. So empathy. There are lots of books on it, lots of studies on it. It's a subject that's very close to my heart because it's something that I feel that is very important now from the point of view of building relationships, both with colleagues and clients and everyone else with whom you are close. So what we've covered in this time is how we make contact with clients in an era of social distancing. And by the way, this relates as much to referrers and institutions and lenders and courts and anybody else with whom we might interact. There are some positives and negatives to that, but do work on. Don't just give up and say, oh well, I'll have to wait till this is all over, because there are ways in which you can build, develop and renew trust and confidence with your clients, building on the 4 qualities that I've mentioned of legal work, service quality, accomplishment quality and relationship quality, leveraging the opportunities that the crisis gives us for cost effectiveness and good legal project management, and more communication to learn what's keeping them awake at night and what's driving them and what the future looks like, because we'll come to in the 3rd episode how we can learn from our clients the issues that they're facing and the trends that are going to be built. And then finally the whole area of communicating with with clients and standing in their shoes. So that's the 2nd episode, and in the 3rd episode we're going to move to the question of how we can build on what we've learned from the crisis so far, what we've learned from our research into the market and our own resources, what we're learning from our clients as we try to build better relationships with them, how we can work on all of that to build plans at practice group, departmental, specialist, and individual level, and take the best use of opportunities that will apply to us as this crisis moves forward. I hope you'll join me for episode 3.